Hey guys, welcome to Drinking with Dave, where every episode I sample a different drink and then pair it with classical music. Recently I did a video on Port Charlotte, and in that video I made contrast to Laphroaig. So today I thought, why not just do Laphroaig? So this is a pretty easy one for me. I usually keep a bottle here at the house. And when it comes to classic Islay Scotches, this is about as classic as it gets. It has a rich history going all the way back to 1815. It's iconic, it's well known, and it's accessible. You can probably find this at your local liquor store, at the local bar or cigar lounge, and it's consistent. With that said, it's going to be hit or miss with most people. Those of us that enjoy Laphroaig like it because it's punchy and it announces itself right off the bat. Those that don't like Laphroaig usually don't for the exact same reason. It's that divisive whiskey that's going to open up a new world for some people and deter others altogether. And so, my personal journey from Speyside Scotches to the peatier, smokier Islay Scotches really began with Laphroaig. But it wasn't immediate. It grew on me over time as I started diving into this new world. And so if you've never had a peated Scotch before, and this is your first one that you try and you don't like it right away, my recommendation is going to be not to give up on peated Scotches altogether, but rather to try another introduction to peat. Maybe something a little more subtle, like Bowmore 15 or Talisker 10, something along those lines. Now, if you do like the Laphroaig and you're willing to spend a little bit more money on one, the Laphroaig Lore is going to be my next recommendation up. It's not as readily accessible as the 10, but it's the best Laphroaig that I've had. The medicinal notes are more subdued and the smoke is just more well-rounded than the 10. But this is what we are looking at today, and so let's go ahead and take a look at the specs. The first thing we notice is it's 43% ABV, which, a little bit low. I like to see something closer to 50. It's also chill filtered, and it's not natural colored, so not ideal, but not exactly a deal breaker. And as for the peatiness, it comes in at a very nice 45 ppm. With that said, let's go ahead and crack this open and see what's on the nose. So this actually is not my first time filming this. I wasn't thinking I poured this into a tumbler glass earlier, which, in retrospect, I think drinking out of a tumbler is perfectly fine. If you're just drinking around the house or at the bar, something you're familiar with. But for sampling purposes, it's really better to use a Glencairn glass. And the reason why is that the shape of this does a much better job of trapping those odors so those gases aren't escaping, and then funnels them right toward the nose. So I'm going to go ahead and try this again. Here we go. Okay, so the first thing I'm picking up are campfire notes. More so than some of its counterparts like Ardbeg or Lagavulin, although I do plan on making a comparison video at some point. I'm also getting notes of heavy smoke, salt. There's a medicinal note in there. It's briny, mossy. Best way I have to describe it, it's like you're sitting on the beach with that sea air wafting in, but you're covered in Band-Aids, and the road out behind you, there's fresh road tar being laid, which may not sound appealing, but it is. And if you know, you know. By the way, if you're identifying notes, you might occasionally use something for comparison that doesn't have a positive association on its own. Doesn't mean it doesn't work within that context. It's like comparing skunk to coffee. You can love the smell of coffee, hate the smell of skunk, but still find a commonality there that's worth noting. Let's do one more here. Picking up a tart, maybe citrusy tone, burnt brisket. Well, let's have a taste. This is exactly what you expect. You know, the nose doesn't always match the palate, but it does with the Laphroaig. It's gritty, it's smoky. The peat hits you right up front. And there's a bit of an oiliness there, but it's actually surprisingly light in texture. And then you get those medicinal notes, heavy iodine. But what happens is it evolves and you start getting notes of licorice and chocolate. And I know I used the Rotar comparison before, but it's actually surprisingly smooth on the finish, almost buttery. Try it again. I'm picking up some oak, notes of charcoal, but it's combining with these fruitier sherry flavors that make for a little bit of a sweeter finish. You know, after you get hit by that first blast of phenols, it really comes down and it finishes a lot smoother, combining this sweeter maple syrupy type flavor with a tangier flavor you might expect from green olives. And that green olive note combines with that sweeter finish very well. So if I'm pairing this with music, I'm going with Dies Irae from Verdi's Requiem. And as always, I'll leave a link down in the description below if you want to check that out. Verdi happens to be my favorite opera composer. I've been to several live performances of Verdi's operas, and it's always an experience. Now this obviously is not from one of his operas, it's from the Requiem, which is actually a mass. And after listening to this, you might think to yourself, this is overly foreboding or atrabilious, but I'll tell you why I like it for this. When I did the video on the Porch Charlotte, I went with Grieg's In the Hall of the Mountain King, which starts a little softer and builds. This does the exact opposite. It knocks you in the teeth right from the opening bar. It announces itself early and does so with gusto. The smoke, the peat, the medicinal notes, they're all right there front and center. You don't have to go looking for them. But what happens after that is it actually backs off a little bit and is much more smoother on the finish. Not that I would describe, this is my dog by the way, who's come over to say hello. Not that I would describe the Requiem as smooth, but it definitely ends softer than it began and has for that foreboding quality. I have seen people sample a Laphroaig for the very first time and get that, what did I just get myself into look in their eyes, which, you know, for many of us eventually turned into, let's do it again. So anyway, that's my take on Laphroaig. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned for future videos. Take care.